A very good day to you all, and welcome back to the ASMR Critique. My name is Joseph, and today I've got something very super special for you. I will be reading The Word at World's End by Francis Brabazon. This edition is published by the John F. Kennedy University Press, and it is available online. The Word at World's End is a series of epic poems. These poems are very spiritual in nature. If you do not know who Francis Brabazon is, I will put some links in the description. Without further ado, let's get into it. The Word at World's End by Francis Brabazon. Copyright 1971. Cover design by William Ward. Preface. With today's preoccupation with the mere sound relations of words in poetry, my work has drawn the criticism that it lacks craft. Yet I do not think there are many writers who work harder at the craft of poetry than I do. In fact, most writers, whether avant-garde or pop, only have to satisfy a public which has been carefully conditioned by every gimmick the genius of publicity can invent. But for years now, I have had to satisfy God, and not the God who is dead or who changes his face according to theological expediency and political necessity, but the God who is God-man, the beautiful person who is the beloved of all, who do not live for bread alone, who is so alive that all other persons are shadows emerging from the limbo of consciousness for the moment of a gesture or cry. But I have always considered that the real craftsmanship is in the shaping of the initial idea, not in the mere sounds of the words used. So I have infinitely crafted my ideas before beginning to write, and in my best work, the idea forged its own form of expression. In Stay with God, the opening line came to me 12 years before I wrote that book, and it was not an odd line jotted down and forgotten. I carried it with me, noting its possibilities and acquiring the material it would need. The Word at World's End began with a short poem written and published in the London Magazine in 1954. The possibilities of its development and extension were apparent, and 6 years later I began making notes on it. Some 200 pages of them, including some 50 formal sonnets, as a preparation for After the Flood. When I began the actual book, it went very quickly. The Elegy, for instance, was written in 2 sittings. The concept that the idea is the main thing, the reason for a poem, is as old as poetry itself, and it has always been the basis of the greatest work. The sound theory is a recent one, a natural rationalization of the state into which poetry has fallen. Poets, on the whole, not having the firm ground of a knowledge of the divine truths of creation upon which to stand and serve with their art, must necessarily occupy themselves exploring sound combinations. Yet, I feel that the Word at World's End does provide interesting sound patterns, and I have paid considerable attention to structural variety. These things have their importance. They give charm to the truth of the idea. They beguile the mind into accepting what the heart knows. They make entertainment. And to entertain the beloved is the only valid reason for a poem. But he is never entertained unless the original idea is shaped in his shape. A Dream of Wet Pavements. I sing within a night that's lent to soap and axes to invent new slaughters of the innocent, where patient rats gnaw tired cement. A night song in a dreadful night, batteried by the fluorescent might of strident trumpets in a fright, bellowing bitchery's delight, which wet pavements shape into dreams that softly sigh, "There's more than seems." Behind the fret, beneath the screams, there flow perennial love streams. In this night which neon makes day, the easy speakmen are raking hay for Big Fist who doles them their pay, and nubile girls sing a roundelay. To men in shirt sleeves, each alone, gnawing his flesh down to the bone, the evening is a stifled groan of the day's rasping monotone. And gazing at the ghastly glow of neon's blood in silent flow, their spasms and their twitchings grow, knowing the cocks will surely crow. And youth in theaters, row on row, sit cheek to cheek and glow to glow, fearing the crop that love may sow, which they with teeth will have to hoe. And smoldering bosoms brassiered snow shines with a phosphorant glow, hiding breasts' bruises that would know why joy goes quick and night so slow. Each bust is a hammer in the brain of each prisoner on his chain, on whose lips words are made profane, the acts of which love's laws maintain. In the sophisticated light of plush caves, vocalists recite, in strangled tones the bed's delight. The red cocks range themselves for fight. The cocks crow red, the red cocks crow. A hair divides high note from low. Man hair, girl hair, united know the magic of electric flow. The wind sighs round tall modcon huts. A door opens and smiles and shuts. Foreign fingers in thighs score ruts. The dawn peeps over trays of butts. Nightmare refreshed, we rise from bed, tighten the loose screws in our head. Breakfast on sawdust and liquid lead, instead of fresh, plain-fashioned bread. The news headlines run, Kingdom come, for the poor, the always with you dumb. New expressway plows through slum. Man dies through drinking office gum. Girl galled at man's two-timing cuts through his refrigerator guts. With oxy torch pleads, he drove me nuts, adding, he always pulled his putts. Diplomat says that rival ghouls patch the pitch his cunning cruels. Wife, mistress, both or either, sewels him on to pinch the crown jewels. New restaurant serves kids from schools to savor with contract renewals. Bones, hair, and nails are used in gruels. Astronauts eat only solid fuels. The Harbor Trust extends the mole so ships can quietly rock and roll. Old generals march out on parole, while taxis honk and fire bells toll. The leader claims parliamentary guesses have spiraled prices of women's dresses and slowed down trains that were expresses to feed the fires of youth's excesses. Then corseted into a stretch, in trousers honed to razor edge, by bus, train, car the city reach, to join Harry once more to the breach. Made in walls of financial frieze, to release a fresh economic breeze, and that typists on electric keys may make reports on nylon knees. The lift takes up a beribboned clown, clutching democracy's new crown, of smiling days without a frown. The ex-president rides it down. The new head mouths he will now decline, mouths for his tongue he gave to spline the wheels of the production line, aggression's nouns through history's line. He mouths and farts most wondrously, and all agree, what oratory! At last we grasp that liberty is the true object of shall be. beneath the white electric glare of glass eyes sweat from startled stare. Nonchalant gladiators tear to shreds frail masks of teeth and hair. Thieves with all the delicate graces of shaven chins and double faces are brought back from minor disgraces to occupy the highest places. The great financiers and their priests, the special agents of the beast, he reaps the most who toils the least, drink vintage virtue at their feasts. From the tallest building's summit, big fists conmen lean to plummet, then straighten up, report and vomit. The truth is what you deduct from it. Day shift, night shift, the robots toil on simple diet of crude oil. No solids, therefore no night soil. Their eyes are ice, though their blood may boil. Slide rules and spanners are all they need to keep them at the required speed. They are indeed a patient breed, produced from a synthetic seed. And neon sun keeps night turned day for easy speakmen to rake the hay, and geared fornicators grind away, and bud-breasted girls sing a roundelay. And in wet pavements fitful gleams, telling of love's perennial streams, lovers discussing hems and seams, discern fulfillment of their dreams. Then home, sweet home, again at night, in car, bus, train, packed sardine tight, for non-breakage and the delight of togetherness in the same plight. Home to a mansion wide and fair, suburban house with grass and air, or climb a back street creaking stair, to a narrow bed and lonely chair. Dinner of bones and bake light, or just a little smoldering spite, while those with fragile appetite prefer eggs fried in gelignite. But some thrive on boiled cans with beans, some leather spread with pickled spleens, others eat only TV screens, depending on their craze and means. For those who need an appetizer with taste control and realizer, the recipes from our first prizer, molasses mixed with fertilizer. The evening streets are spinning wheels, the pavements are gyrating girls. The mayor, wearing stiletto heels, coyly conducts the dance of seals. Small shopkeepers and laborites swing from the lines of colored lights, and bankers from the building's heights hang down in bat-like stalactites. Children blowing 10-cent whistles shoot through the crowd like flying missiles, and every vantage point bristles with columnists typing their epistles. The latest supersonic planes scream through nerves to terminal brains, and massed brass bands in honeyed strains announce technology's latest gains. Big fists con men, puff-cheeked, slit-eyed, as swine in sty have multiplied. Beyond pig comfort, they trot slide, in the cool evening, in their pride. Pink snouts held high like flags they glide, so smoothly and so satisfied, and bow and smile, as they trot slide, grunt greetings that are grunt replied. That swine knowledge be verified, manhood, womanhood, they've denied, spirits fair form have stultified, hoard science, bright mind stupefied. The poet laureate, they decide, shall be he who has best supplied them with their grunts, squeals, versified, in meters matching their short stride. Some astronauts ply chimps from space, with booze to win their word of grace. regarding the right gear and pace for cornering in the Sputnik race. Singly the lionesses walk, gazelles their eyes and doves their talk. Nothing can hinder them nor balk the slaughter of the game they stalk. Upon the polished plain each goes, determinedly poised on her toes, led by the gentle breeze that blows, the thread of scent hooked in her nose. They walk aloof in rhythmed trance, as priestesses in a phallic dance. The quarry is the jungle giant's. They do not leave success to chance. They stalk the polished evening plains, gazelles their eyes, foxes their brains. Their talk is like soft summer rains. They swing their hips and lash their trains. Decapitated close-up heads sing arias from the watersheds. Of roofs, torsos, and chromium sleds ride down the night of snowy beds. And high above the city square, stainless steel angels debonair chant all in war and love is fair, humming for chorus the Lord's Prayer. We stare through the electric haze, by which neon turns nights to days, at silver shapes singing roundelays. The speakmen know which line best plays. They speak us freedom, freedom to blink at a chromium kitchen sink, to sleep alone on the cold water brink, while space suits copulate with mink. Freedom to listen to the fear that curls about a tender ear, stitching two eyelids with one tear, bruising bright lips with stone despair. They tell us that the world is real, so long as we keep the price of steel, and know that success derives from spiel, and gloved hand marries iron heel. So long as we believe a star is somewhere else than where we are, that happiness depends on tar, and soul is in a chemist's jar, by all who are sophisticated. Soul, God, and virtue are downrated, and replaced by an elongated, far view that is with space equated. Progress is God, these speakmen say, girls croon it in a roundelay, that we will all keep on and pay big fist his price for our better day. The day of better, greater things, when the poor have more than ancient kings, and the rich may have a pair of wings, to a star that ever manward sings. They tell us, yes, behind the fret of drills and scream of turbojet, freedom and truth we'll surely get within the diamonds of our sweat, within the rubies of our blood, within the opals of the flood of tears that in the night are shed. Within these is our highest good. Big fist may lead us by the nose and belt us on with freedom's blows, but still within each heart love flows in streptophonic undertows. For every heart within it bears a virgin soul untouched by fears of being laid off and rent arrears, a pristine self unstained by tears. Beneath all this which is or seems, behind the crude electric screams, which wet pavements shape into dreams, self floweth in perennial streams. Separate, though mingled in accord, a four-part fugue of the great word, guarded by an angel with a flaming sword, which only the pure in heart have heard. It flows on through our lives and glows in textures of the themes we chose, when from primeval swamps we rose, manward under evolution's blows. It flows on ever to compose new tissue which we then transpose into acts of poetry and prose, and dissolve at last in a full close. From home arrival till late at night, screams, flashes, purrs for hearing, sight, the ad word on electric flight, to keep and whet our appetite. Guffawing asininities drip from TV screens like hot cheese, and round the children's beds like fleas hop singing obscene litanies. For teenagers the one mass ear, tuned to the drool of sex and fear, supported by the grin and leer, and eye that drops a plastic tear. And on wide screens gunmen and mole the wide romantic life extol, and hips rotate and bellies roll. For these the kids pay big fist toll. Oh, little gears and little sprockets of the machine mind has built to mock its divinity, you make the rockets to tear your young limbs from their sockets. And because, sometimes in despair, you pad the night to kill the fear, the speakmen with a solemn air delinquencies upsurge declare. Kids, who will sing your threnody, the wrong of surplus energy, even though on earth none is born free, but God-man on his Calvary? The speakmen urge the wide, long view. Together we will make it new, a brave new world for me and you, togetherly in one big stew. Togetherly, yet each one free, in enterprise togetherly, in a controlled equality, homogenized security. Togetherly suspended float, togetherly laugh, cry, emote, togetherly hope, pray by rote, and all the children have a vote. Together, but no fixed relation, a vacuum-packed hygienic nation, in static self-evaluation, and clothed and fed by automation. Togetherly so bright, so glad, at 60, aping what 20 had, each a coy lass or coming lad, in zestful pursuit of each fad. Togetherly, alone, the sad, unfamilied old the might have had, but big beasts prowl and small ones pad, behind the wide smile of the ad. God, numb our minds and stop the pain of loneliness, peace like soft rain, fall and wash away the rubbed-in stain. Tomorrow we must march again. We pray for one night free from huddles of ad men and soap opera bubbles, from writhing hips and obscene cuddles, and pools of sentimental puddles, from polished nails and sawdust souls delineating future goals, from bulls and bears playing at bowls, because it is our head that rolls. From bribery, backslap, boot lick, from con men's smooth talk and from slick diplomacy and politics, backed by, of course, the nuclear stick. One night from pacts and treatise scribble, from quasi-intellectual quibble, from foam wash of idiots dribble, praising progress the sluttish sibyl. A one-tune phrase high, low, and middle, played on a polyphonic fiddle, while women dream over backyard griddle, and men fence stand, moon gaze, and piddle. All through the night trains crammed with goods, bearing instructions and new shoulds. Trundle and hyenas from the woods prompt further musts and if I coulds. All day, all night, dear God does wait, watching the bubble on his plate grow to its proper size and date, with pen in hand compassionate. I close my song, the night is spent, where patient rats gnaw tired cement, and virgin veils were rudely rent, and axes slew the innocent. From which the speakman made much hay, while buds of girls sang the roundelay, the wide smile for the better day, the line that big fist knew would pay. A night song in an iron night, now sicklied over with the light of broken trumpets' desperate flight, that once blazed with fluorescent might, from which wet pavements shaped dim dreams that whispered, "There is more than seems." Beneath our fitful gleams, there flow perennial love streams. The dawn breaks for us on a high plateau beneath a cold glass sky, where even vultures do not fly, to roam like beasts with wordless cry. The emptiness is a steel vice, which holds us till we pay the price our lives have fixed. Across our heart's ice, God-man stumbles with his huge cross. Elegy for the Young Poets. The young poets go by, on choral feet they go, so cruelly slow, searching the corners of their eyes for definitions, searching for freedom amongst the prohibitions, greeting vague recognitions, not yet having learnt to listen to their heart's tone. For the meaning of things is in that word alone, which was sown in the heart when the word first escaped from God's lips. They would give us gold, they who are cargoless ships. How long so? Time slips, stealthily, unheard by the ferment of the yeast. Through the swamps in the night ranges and roars the beast. God-man, the greatest, the least, suffers and supports the world in the palm of his pain. None thrives on song. Lives are fattened for gain, grain, grown and ripened only for the mills of big fist. Brain and muscle, love and fair speech, all to him are grist, but the wind of God blows where it lists, and big fist and his satraps will bow before its storm. Do not mind, sweet God, that none now knows your form. Remember the warm welcome we once gave you and took you in from the heat of burning midday, and gave you the honored seat, and washed your feet, and set before you our choicest meat and wine. Forgive us our definitions, and redefine our volume and line. Give us bright hope, and gladden us with surprise. On antennae that big fist pokes up into the skies, the young poets have hurt their eyes. They listen for the voice of dawn, but hear only the brute, tramping the night and devouring the fruit. Can a flute give out music when the player's lips are sealed? Can a harvest come from an unplowed, unsown field? Can a cow yield sweet milk that was never bestridden by a bull? Can a man come to knowledge who has not been to school in lover's lane, who is full of violent purposes and leeched by distrust? Can a stone become a garden without first being dust, or wheat attacked by rust grow into a golden sea bearing lives unafraid? The young poets are brave. They would steer where none has steered, until he has heard the bell of his heart give out its resonant reasons. Each cat walks the pavement of his night, cognizing treasons, notes the seasons of politics and fashions in art and woman's dress. They hum tunes in modalities that each time regress, and will not express the malefic mutations within their head. So one told us the next morning when we found him dead, and took him home to bed, where he fingered lightly the textured quilt of the dream. which was within the waters that the light moved upon, the stream of unreal things which seem real, real eyes, real hands, and white breast lit by a rose, the stream of conditioned consciousness which ever flows, nourishing the world that glows upon the screen of mind as from a projector, a film in which each of us writes his part and is actor and editor, who permits a happy close or ends it on a sob, and each is the audience that pays 5 bob and says, "Not a bad job, the lighting was good, action could have been faster." So, millions of lives, birth the hope, death the blaster, until one meets the perfect master, him before whom death sulks, and young love skips like a fawn, who lays out each night for his walking a star-splashed lawn, who pinches dawn's cheek, so that her shy rosy face welcomes the sun, who is the source and the song and the goal of each one, and one's journey is done, and one becomes at his feet living and singing dust. One by one the young poets ride up in the lift for a crust from Big Fist. His lust, satisfied, they are put on the payroll and retained. In the night the stars went out, and hope, and it rained, and everything was stained with blood. In vain we waited for the morning's brightness. Presently God will cover the earth with whiteness. Then the young poets will write poems about snow, as the Japanese did long ago. Big Fist rules the city of which bones he has built, with blood and river silt, to stick them together, best ready-mixed mortar. He spawned his children to the tune of slaughter. His eldest daughter he married to his chief architect, then to his builder, who lay with her while hammers and rock drills held her in terror, then sold her to the keeper of pornographic appliances, who arranges all diplomatic alliances during closed-door seances, with a trollop as medium whelped by a bitch. Round the city runs the deep, wide sewage ditch, which boils at night like pitch. Beyond this lie the marble and slate golf courses. A sullen sea gnaws at the doorsteps of houses. Its foam of white blouses is used as milk for infants and in cups of tea. I would so much like to discuss philosophy under a tree, and just once Aristotle's good life to savor. But far across the turmoil of the traffic's labor lives my next-door neighbor. How can I reach him across the huge, vacant days? I ring him on the phone that's connected at the maze. At last a girl's voice says, "What number are you trying to get?" The voice is kind. The woman's eyes are flowers troubled by the wind, searching to find. They are flowers that have no sun in their stars. They bend down and are drowned in the waters. God, have you nothing for your daughters? Wrong number? What number are you trying to get? A man's voice says, "Get off the line, mug." I would have liked, yet it's too late to regret. What was it now that I wanted to tell my friend? The geophysical year promised to send warning of world's end. But how to avoid the ice? I cannot find the stairs. The ostriches bury their heads in sand in pairs. The wheels turn at the fairs. The young poets grope along the pavements for their eyes. What the mouth proclaims, the curtained ear denies. It is late, but one tries to understand, to sift some wheat grains from the sand. The young poets prepare to submit their demand. They mooch around and stand, and sit and stare at tables and coffee lounges. At football, or maybe it's chess, white socks trounces, black feet, a bum scrounges the price of a meal for a couple of pots of beer. Everywhere grow crosses of little fear, for all must appear loyal to the big fist or rot in a prison camp. The swans fly over, each one carrying a lamp to light the swamp, on which the city rests on synthetic rubber posts. Big Fist confers with his staff of brass-hatted ghosts. He boasts he will dominate the world and then the planets. The robots making the armaments groan and sweat. Big Fist's mother quietly frets. She says at her age it's too far to go to the moon. Big Fist has long forgotten his childhood's bright balloon and its careless tune, and no one has told him that stars shine is stars stare, man words. Forgotten too the sad story of Attila Khan's hordes, he burnt the records, and of Napoleon's army on the pitiless plain. His telescopes are trained on the starry terrain. His electronic brain computes figures of svelte Horus through the rose mist of power. The young poets are hopeful, they await their hour from a conning tower. They are watching closely the scene while Big Fist gloats. On the mountains the young goat herds pasture their goats. The heroine emotes as the hero drowns the villain in a soup tureen. The film goes on unwinding on the silver screen. That's life what is seen. We come out into the night and say, a good, a poor show. I wonder has my friend got home yet? How slowly the hours go. I would so like to visit him if he's at home. The cock smooths his feathers with his bright red comb. The Shastris chant Om as they climb the high mountain to Shiva's abode. They painfully traverse under learning's great load, for there's no road to God except in the dust at the Master's feet. At any time now we may meet world's end in our street. The young poets greet one another, peeping shyly through their buttonholes. The young poets are very earnest about their souls and their goals. They sharpen their intellects on French-polished boards. Without heart's tune, one can only make pictures with words, and time affords no release to the shining song way. God-man walks the earth, preparing another day. Our love is his pay. He goes the long, weary road, carrying his cross. Time audits our balance sheet of profit and loss, checks net against gross. How will we stand when on the screen flashes the end? I hope everything is all right with my friend. I would send him a letter, but my writing paper is spoiled. Soon will the glorious banner of God-man be unfurled over the whole world. My heart stands firm, though in the waters my mind is swirled. The people, yes, but science has betrayed the people, and God is merely a steeple of a church where a priest thumbs through his brief. The young poets have not been trained to carry burdens of grief. They seek relief in every new twist of thought and feathered theory. Time counts down the hour to the zero of bankruptcy. Gut God democracy discusses peace with the brain-spattered communist heel. The armies of Big Fist march out like spokes in a wheel, crying, Panchashil, Panchashil. Big Fist's mother quietly broods and wonders and frets. The swan of Manasarawar has been shot down by fighter jets. Big Fist regrets, and orders holy Kailas to be encircled with guns. As spokes from a hub march out the columns of both Huns, so the film runs. The photography was good, the direction poor. The young poets cannot stand it, they beat on the door of culture's store. Their nails score the marble walls as they sink with a cry to the ground. Be brave, young lovers, the film is nearly unwound. Soon will the primal sound burst in your hearts as a 1,000-petaled flower. Soon will God-man in his infinite power assert his hour. For now with the veil of the world's pain he has covered his face. The stars whirl age after age towards man. Men race for the first star place. The apocalyptic horsemen set feet to stirrups. The authorities increase per head the cups of tension ease syrups. There are new brands called Quick Rest and Down Thistle. They have developed a new weapon, a missile, powered by brain cells and gristle. Two-way, it kills before it's fired and kills where it lands. Big Fist has taken to doing somersaults and headstands to renew his glands. The young poets study metaphor and illusion. Man has become a sickness, a hemorrhoidal protrusion of himself. God-man enters seclusion. He must suffer for us the full sum of our violence. Naked within each heart, bearing all the pain and defilements, he stands in his perfect silence. His sweat is upon his body as 1,000,000 lashes. Something splashes. On my hand, I look up. The night is a cave through which the moon races. The Ballad of the Rhyming Knight. The knight on draught horse rides for lass, through desert, jungle, and mountain pass. He's very bold, but young, alas! Jesus goes bareback on an ass. The knight goes by in shining mail. Shireen milks camel into pail. The hermit recites love's sad tale. Mohammed meets the stony hail. The knight clops by in jingling steel. Young Kuei Fei her own pot shall keel. The boatman pays out line from reel. Confucius plans the commonweal. The knight trots by in armor bright. The yogi's mat is snow, pure white. He dries 3 wet sheets in one night. The Buddha preaches men's birthright. The knight rides very earnestly to slay the bad men 1, 2, 3. Milkmaids, the fairest in the country, dance with Krishna beneath a tree. William lands at Hastings town. Harold with arrow in eye is down. The referee counts verb with noun, and Joe Louis retains the crown. Columbus sails west to come east, but Erickson L. got there first. Psychologists have taped the beast. Desire for life is Trishna, thirst. The sower that keeps going out to sow, a crop that tax, not he, shall mow. They drive cars fast, but Fangio scooped 5 years Grand Prix in a row. The knight fears not the tyrant's nod. The boatman casts the hook with rod. The plowman turns the shining sod. Shankara says, Atman is God. The knight says, scowling, by my word, you'll not, dog-faced one, have reward. Of Bracy's fair won in Maraud, Athene soothes him with winged word. The knight falls backward on the sword, spitted upon the false knight's sword. The ladies say, forsooth, good lord! The prince yawns, I am ghastly bored. The knight starts up and shakes his locks, stares wildly around, pulls up his socks, and prepares again for battle's shocks. The maidens smile and smooth their frocks. Ticker tape measures heroes' stocks. The hens submit to lust of cocks. The prodigal shit to the hawks. Tramps home to homestead vines and flocks. The rain still falls in sunny Spain. The matador with grace with pain slays with his word his love again. John sleeps midst lilies without stain. The axeman fells the shady tree. Men search for oil beneath the sea to feed the god prosperity. St. Francis marries poverty. The poet fills another page with love, with doubt, or merely rage. God-man prepares to come on stage and sing salvation for this age. Zarathustra says, right thought, deed, word, the knight's stout horse stamps through the ford. He rides for lady, not for lord. Her hair binds him with a silken cord. The knight rides on with rhymed lay. On lips for lips are all his pay. 2 lips, 2 eyes, hair like mown hay, and breasts as fleece on shearing day. He rides and sings, and hobble chains jingle along the leafy lanes. He rides for love, and love restrains. Panchakosh subtract, Atman remains. He rides and rhymes and sings his say. To arbored lady he sings when they shall meet in bed to love and pray. The night is not far from the way. After the flood. After the flood of our desolation, after the twisted steel and the broken concrete, after the flood of grace of God-man's word in our hearts, and the face of the earth had been washed clean of stain and monuments, those of us who remained after the fall of the cities and survived the wandering, came together in silence, in an open place, in a new morning, empty, but for the sun, newly risen out of the ocean. And one found voice for all of us. We have to admit, God, that you did the right thing. We had become loused up, a man's word, had the stink but not the weight of his turd. We had forgotten, every son of a bitch of us, how to sing. What is a man until he has been drowned, and has risen again from the flood of you, with a river of song in his mouth, has found his own shape in the image of the blood of you? In everything we had been wrong. We did not believe that God-man was your face, that in his word was the total grace, already present in the creation song. We had lost the gift of high decision. We conceived that tomorrow was merely today's revision. Yet we were troubled at times when we saw the new moon, when we heard certain old songs. At times our pain was like trembling drops of rain. But when we tried to praise you, our words were as foolish as drunken trumpets. We could not make one small song in the shape of your beauty. The days sprawled and heaved like swollen seas against rocks. They grieved like superannuated clocks. They were ashamed as paternal cocks, lust spent and lust deceived, alarmed as power bosses who have achieved those progresses which the bed mocks. Time tyrannized the days, and you, God, suffered the chain and the iron beak, total man pain. Suffered and synchronized, man time and God time again, by men to be realized. The words of the word, your gift to men, the words that are a flame in the mouth, to illumine your name, that name which the stars were singing, as we, your sons, danced past them on our way to man's state. Our cities were hills that drew no rain, from which no virtue flowed out over earth, sustaining structure and flowering that mirth, which makes eyes dance across a surging plain. Our cities were coagulated again. The good life, thrown on a garbage dump, thin. Love hung up on nerves like bits of tin, in winds of belly laughs of the insane. Our cities were maps with squares marked treasure, for which one dug and found a rotten bone, dialed wrong numbers on a telephone, markets where one shopped for packaged pleasure, Back home unwrapped it and found only pain, untouched by hand and wrapped in cellophane. Your creation song sang the stars into praises, and earth into place for man singing. But our speech ooze had spread a film over the earth, and only the flood of our cry, the flood of your word, could make it clean again. We sounded seas, drilled rock, stared, snow wastes, where nothing moved but the wind. We gave ear to progress prophecies, but private plenty reared, new public squalor, fear, chasing the blood through the ventricles of heart, became the best attended, wagered sport. And the great dream, a journey to a star, to find ourselves already there, still forever in a state of war. Dreams, horizons, a new sun in black space, tomorrow, always tomorrow, but the tomorrow of anger is ash, and the tomorrow of hatred is death. The days were hummings by a boy with a stick, along a sultry summer corrugated, iron fence orchestrally inflated, with episodal matter suave and slick. We lived in the end days, sick, mauled by mathematics, irritated, by ever-growing burdens that were rated. Gain, the gain from turning living bread to brick. We knew it was all a dirty trick, played on us by Big Fist and those who licked his shoes. So, but his number one sidekick was our unlove. We for ourselves baited the rat traps of cities and arranged for our souls to be crated, leaving fair earth for the men she long had waited. We were men with broken feet on betrayed journeys, alone in companies under a cold glass sky. Wordless, like that of beasts, was our cry, into the last days of the great heart freeze. Always alone, always in companies, through narrow ravines on a high plateau where vultures did not fly, and even scorpions found disease. Ever we went on, fattening our miseries, on cropped concrete and dim remembrances of the sun and the breeze. Billowing tall grass, longing to die, at last we begin to understand. The seas below us on the plains were your weeping for our cry, and world's end was suddenly lit by your compassionate eye. And we heard in our hearts the bursting of your infinite word, the same primal word which stirred in the womb of the great dark, and one spark of which issued as all the blazing suns, in which were hidden earth, and the seed of men, to be perfect ones. And the wind of your word dried up the flood you had wept, leaving clean the face of the earth of the monuments of our boasts reared on cruel labor. We have come down, God, from the separation into this silent morning, to begin a new day in the sun, to sing a new song to you, to continue the earth for our children. Hymn to God the Man. Beloved God, all the earth is singing you, in the impermanent materials of stone, leaf, and heart, singing you, yearning, leaning towards your reaping. God, the Father, the Son of yourself, whole God, perfect man, cherisher of the sap in all things, destroyer of the worn out, the false of all things, releaser of the love in all things, which, locked in the prison of heart in leaf and stone, raises itself in longing towards your reaping. You are the perennial and glorious Avatar, the human and lovely Rasul, the sudden and beautiful Christ, who stoops to man's state and walks the earth, carrying the cross of our violences, of our little stupidities of progress, to other than God, our own perfect self-state, for we have ever turned from that which we most passionately desired, and hated that which we most dearly loved, carrying your cross, talking intimately with your disciples as their brother, teaching them, nourishing them as their master, cracking a joke as you pause to wipe the sweat from your lovely forehead. God-man, whole God, perfect man to us now, and to the cavemen in remote prehistory, full of love for you, knowing your voice in the waters, in the fire and the wind, and before this, to civilizations, to cavemen, to civilizations, millions of times back to the time of your creating, man and earth and the universe out of your whim of self-knowing, spanning the immensity of time. In one moment of your perfect manhood, ever, beloved, would we be eagles of praise to you. Ever are we dust trying to sing your glory. How beautiful you are! What a dreaming in the dawn is your brow! What oceans of love are your eyes! What music of our new singing is in your throat! What a proud new architecture is in your hands! How perfectly shaped are your feet for our beyond journeying! The symmetry of your body is the assurance of our well-being. You are the song of all singers who have ever sung. You are the tenderness of lovers of all time. The line of your mouth is the direction of our journey. The curve of your neck is the contour of our containment. In your fingers is the cunning of all the works we shall make. In your eyes the love of all our loving. How marvelous was your creating! From the thread of nothingness you wove the vast universe and this little earth, and man, all because you did not know who you were, and had the whim to know yourself, as whole God, as perfect man, out of absolutely nothing, this seeming something, contained within your everything. Oh, the long way from the stars' first singing, the long pain from the time you broke out of your imprisonment in stone, and crept up, age after age, to man's state. Yourself, your own image of you, perfectly sculptured, articulated for self-knowing, your ear eager for your voice, your eye for sight of you. How dense you were in hard denseness, stone-locked, in your dreams of yourself as stone. How tree-rooted you became, thrusting upwards, spreading out gropingly towards your infinity. How feeble you were as worm, how silently you glided through swamps, through the grass as serpent seeking yourself, and as lizard scurried and stretched yourself in the sun. How you fish swam in the shallow waters, seeking yourself, dived down deep in your ocean, scaled waterfalls, seeking yourself in the highest waters. How as animal you longed in animal longing for yourself, crashing out of the jungle, trumpeting like the rising sun, howling across frozen steppes, crying in fox cry, like a child in distress in the night. Bull bellowed bull staring into the sunset, pawing the earth, longing intensely for yourself, proudly over plains lord of the world, stealthily at night through silent forests suddenly alive, then stood up, beating your breast, unable to endure not being man. Then you became man, and how great was your fall! You had hammered out on the anvil of time your true shape, by means of which you could know who you were, but you forgot all about the long way and the long pain, and why you had had the fortitude to endure it. You dithered about, digging in the earth, examining. What you found, stared at stars, wondering. Beguiled by what you had already been, made wars, instead of war on yourself. always conquering, but not your own nature. What a gainsaying of the long way and the long pain. But eventually you turned, and took your stand in the puzzle and seethe of yourself, and became your own hero and fought your way, out of the tangle of flesh and the drift of stars, found out the backward path that leads forward to self, across the terrible shining plains of your own energy, and its allurements and enchantments, stormed mind, destroyed mind and its delusion of other than self, proved the seeming of everything to be nothing, nothing but your dream of other than yourself, and became yourself whole God, and returned to earth as perfect man, and taught us the law and the love and the way to self, to truth. Millions of times in your compassion you have come to us, borne the cross of our rejection and violence, and waited with vast patience the extent of our folly, of our little greeds and progress to other than self. And now again you have walked the earth, but as the moment of your glory drew near, the talk with your disciples died on your lips, and the swift glances fled from your eyes. Your brow was a sea of concrete in which no green thing lived. Your body was all the steel of the world, made into a cross on which you hung and waited, the eternity of the precise moment of your word, which was our destroying and renewal, and the again path for our stubborn feet. How the glory of your brow is the light of our safe journeying. The love of your eyes is the mirror of our revealment and the certainty of our arrival. How glorious you are as man, how helpless as God. So helpless that you could not hide your godhood, even behind the walls of your pain. How very man you are. How absolutely God. That was The Word at World's End, published in 1971, and amazingly just as relevant, if not more relevant today. I love the range with which Francis Brabazon is working. He is able to convey the extremes very precisely and dispassionately. He speaks about the excesses of our times. He draws upon ancient knowledge, and he is hopeful about the future. It is impossible to speak about this work without discussing who it was commissioned by. Francis Brabazon became a follower of the Avatar Meher Baba, when all of his life's work afterwards was dedicated to him. In 1958, Francis Brabazon established a Baba Center in Australia on an 100-acre estate in Queensland, named Avatar's Abode, which is where he was buried. I was actually privileged enough to be a part of a play chronicling Francis Brabazon's life that is posted on my other channel, my personal channel, and I'll link that video below. I can't quite say that I'm able to understand all of this book. This is probably the 4th time I've read through it. But every time I go through it, I see a little more of what Mr. Brabazon is trying to say. His use of repetition is really good for emphasizing some of the themes. And some of the terms he uses are very illustrative, such as his mention of Big Fist, who is kind of a recurring character, but really represents sort of the ruling cabal, you might say. Some of his stanzas here are just immensely powerful and totally scathing. He does not pull any punches here in his critique of modern civilization, but at the same time he has also seen the bigger picture. So the first part of it, the A Dream of Wet Pavements is the longest self-contained section. And it's just basically about the fall of modern man and how we basically just fumbled the ball. And of course it ends with the hymn to God the Man, which is probably the most hopeful part of the book. To my reading, after the flood takes place in the future, which is kind of after the fall of civilization, or any civilization, not necessarily ours, if you subscribe to the theory that there have been major worldwide catastrophes that have wiped out previous civilizations, such as the Great Flood, which has been well documented across cultures. But after the flood is kind of looking back on what we call the modern world right now. Nothing moved but the wind. We gave ear to progress prophecies, but private plenty reared new public squalor. Fear, chasing the blood through the ventricles of heart, became the best attended a wagered sport. And the great dream, a journey to a star, to find ourselves already there, still forever in a state of war. I mean, that just kind of says it all, doesn't it? Fear, chasing the blood through the ventricles of heart, became the best attended wagered sport. I think that right there is talking about the stock market. Fear is not only the best form of control, it's the best way to redistribute wealth. There's also this strong theme of looking towards the future as some glorious destination. The idea of space travel, which was in vogue at the time, space race, thinking that we would find our destiny in the stars and kind of just ignoring the degradation of civilization in the meantime. When you sort of have this precept that basically we're going to go beyond Earth, then Earth doesn't really matter as much. It's kind of put away in people's minds as an afterthought, saying we don't have to worry about our planet. The elite, the scientists, the politicians, they'll sort it out. They'll get us terraforming some other planets. The universe is our oyster, so not only do we not have to worry about it, but anything is permissible to achieve that goal. So there he's pointing out kind of the fallacious lies that are being told to people to keep them in line. Just endure it. Endure all of this debt and torture, because the future will be worth it. When in reality, we should be bettering ourselves and looking within, not externally, for our salvation. We have come down, God, from this separation into this silent morning, to begin a new day in the sun, to sing a new song to you, to continue the earth for our children. So here and after the flood, he's imploring God on the behalf of humanity to help us all. So here he's speaking about the new life, or the new humanity, basically. What's next after this sort of low period? He also writes quite a bit about how modern poets and artists are totally misled. It's most pointed in Elegy for the Young Poets, which also contains this idea of the reduction of art from something that would help us all to sort of see the truth and beauty inherent in creation, sort of using flowing language to just pretty up what exists. He's basically speaking about misdirected energies, about the souls of artists being misled by a complete lack of truth in their lives, searching for freedom amongst the prohibitions, greeting vague recognitions. It's extremely clear in the first two stanzas here, from Elegy for the Young Poets. The young poets go by, on choral feet they go, so cruelly slow, searching the corners of their eyes for definitions, searching for freedom amongst the prohibitions, greeting vague recognitions, not yet having learnt to listen to their heart's tone. For the meaning of things is in that word alone, which was sown in the heart when the word first escaped from God's lips. They would give us gold, they who are cargoless ships. How long so? Time slips, stealthily unheard by the ferment of the yeast. I love this metaphor of cargoless ships, right? It's from the outside, you can't tell that they have no cargo. But as soon as you're on deck, it's like, oh, there's nothing there. Which to me is the perfect way to describe most of the art of the 20th and 21st centuries so far. The character of Big Fist, well, not really a character, but sort of the modern disease, so to speak, is brilliantly crafted here. Brain and muscle, love and fair speech, all to him are grist. but the wind of God blows where it lists, and big fists and his satraps will bow before its storm. So there's another thread of hope there, which is that Big Fist and his cronies are powerless before God. But here, when he speaks of the young poets, I see it as him reflecting on kind of the counterculture, some might say failed countercultural movements of the 60s. On antennae that Big Fist pokes up into the skies, the young poets have hurt their eyes. They listen for the voice of dawn, but hear only the brute. See, it's the static of the modern age, the inability to find true art anywhere. In film, television, radio, it's all controlled. The mass media is all owned by the same few people. Tramping the night and devouring the fruit. Can a flute give out music when the player's lips are sealed? Can a harvest come from an unplowed, unsown field? Can a cow yield sweet milk that was never bestridden by a bull? Can a man come to knowledge who has not been to school in lover's lane, who is full of violent purposes and leeched by distrust? Can a stone become a garden without first being dust, or wheat attacked by rust, grow into a golden sea bearing lives unafraid? The young poets are brave, they would steer where none has steered, until he has heard the bell of his heart give out its resonant reasons. And he uses metaphors of politics, fashion, art, music, and film, the stream of conditioned consciousness which ever flows, nourishing the world that glows upon this screen of mind as from a projector. This is pretty amazing, and I think this is straight from Baba's work as well. How the world is more like projected onto a screen, which is our perception of reality. This metaphor of like the world being projected onto a screen is actually a metaphor used by metaphysicians who take consciousness as the ground of being rather than matter. You kind of get a glimpse into Brabazon's more personal thoughts here, where he says, "I would so much like to discuss philosophy under a tree, for just once Aristotle's good life to savor, but far across the turmoil of the traffic's labor lives my next-door neighbor. How can I reach him across the huge, vacant days?" And then he goes on to describe, like, the sort of roadblocks he has with regards to communication. It's like, how do you get through to people? How can we communicate and convey this innate spiritual connection to God? It's like you can't permeate and get through to people. The huge vacant days, the days where we are just trying to like unwind and process what is going on, because the world is so ridiculous and complicated, and the more prevalent that media becomes in our lives, the less energy we have to sort of deal with the more existential questions. Why are we here? What are we here for? What is the right action to take? How can we make this world a better place for our kids? All that stuff. The ostriches bury their heads in sand in pairs. The wheels turn at the fairs. The young poets grope along the pavements for their eyes. What the mouth proclaims the curtained ear denies. It is late, but one tries to understand, to sift some wheat grains from the sand. Here I believe he's addressing fellow artists, trying to tell them, I know it's difficult trying to find truth and God in everyday life, but it's there. Basically, I think he's saying the truth is hard to hear and it's hard to see because of how we've been sort of taught and conditioned to understand the world. Big Fist has long forgotten his childhood's bright balloon and its careless tune, and no one has told him that stars shine is stars stare manwards. So this really reminds me of the whole saying. It's not that it's untrue that you live in the world, but it's more true that the world is within you. So right there you've got the idea that the kingdom of God is within you, that it's more true that consciousness is the ground of being. So in the Dream of Wet Pavements, when he talks about Big Fist and he talks about the sort of role of the modern artist, he goes, the poet laureate, they decide, shall be he who has best supplied them with their grunt squeals versified, in meters matching their short stride. So right there, he's sort of calling out the modern artist for like, hey, all you are doing is enabling these people who are basically tearing apart civilization. It's like, hey, basically you are enabling these people to bring everyone else further from God. By all who are sophisticated, soul, God, and virtue are downrated and replaced by an elongated, far view that is with space equated. See, it's an elongated far view. It's a way of thinking about and looking at the world that is not simple. It is based on a whole bunch of assumptions and presuppositions. Again, Brabazon, as pointed as he is, he always makes sure to clarify that the future is hopeful. He says, "Soon will God-man in his infinite power assert his hour, for now with the veil of the world's pain he has covered his face." So basically, he's just saying like, hey, don't despair, you know? Anyhow, I thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope that you have a great day. If you liked what you read here, Francis Brabazon has many, many publications. I highly recommend In Dust I Sing, and definitely check out the work of Meher Baba. Listen Humanity is a good place to start if you're interested, or the discourses. So take care and stay awesome. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to this channel. Subscribes, likes, and comments will really keep me going and help me to continue to produce more content. Stay awesome and have a great day. We'll see you next time.